Today we're going to be learning Ketubot daf Yud. This is the daf for Shabbat. We're going to start at the very top of the page. We saw in yesterday's daf that Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel ha'omer petach patuach matzati. If he claims when I went in, it was clear that it was wider than it was supposed to be because her hymen was already torn, he is believed in order to say you're going to lose your ketubah, meaning you lied to me, you weren't really a virgin, and I want out. Okay, so now, or possibly he wants to say only 100 zuz and not 200. Itmar. So the top of our daf says, Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, that was Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Rav Nachman says in the name of Shmuel, Mishum Rabban Shimon ben Elazar, Chachamim tiknu lahem lebnot Yisrael lebetula 200 almana maneh. The rabbis were the ones who instituted that a betula, a virgin, gets 200, and an almana, a widow, gets 100. The Hem, since they were the ones who instituted this decree, okay, the way Rashi explains this is that since if the ketubah was to oraita, then they wouldn't be believed to claim this. But comes Rashi and he explains it. What the Gemara is saying is since the rabbis instituted this, they were able to set up exactly how it works. So they basically said, yes, you have to give her 200 zuz. But if you come and claim that she wasn't really a betula, you can give her less. Okay, you can claim, we'll believe your claim. To which the Gemara said, I don't get it. Doesn't make any sense. If the whole idea was to protect the woman and give her what she's deserving of, why are we believing the man, right? Maybe he's lying. Maybe he's taking away what she deserves. Okay, if we stop for a minute and just talk about why the woman is given this ketubah money, right? She's given it to protect her from the event of death or divorce of the husband, so that the husband doesn't quickly rush to divorce her. So she has why 200 zuz? So if you say it's by Torah law, which we'll see there's an opinion that says there's a machloket, it's going to come up on today's daf, whether it's by Torah law or by rabbinic law, then it says in the Torah, 50 kesef, in some context, we'll see that the amount is clear. And then you'd have to say almana, well, we'll see later where they get the almana from. But if you say it's rabbinic, so then the reason for 200 zuz seems to be that that's the average, a year's worth of living expenses. So we want to give her a year to be able to function on her own. The almana, some people explain that it's because she has less money. So she has money already from her first husband, so she has less need for more money, so we can give her less money. That's another possibility as to why she gets less. But in any case, the point is, the question is, why are we believing the man? Theoretically, the woman has a chazkat betulim. She was a betula. So why don't we believe her, until proven otherwise? So what does Rava say? Amar Rava, there's something working in his favor. What is that? Why would he lie? The reason he would lie is he wants maybe out of the marriage, right? Well, he's the day after his wedding. And comes Rava and he says, Chazaka ein adam torech b'suda mafsida. He just invested all this money in a big wedding. If he really didn't want to be married to her, he wouldn't have done that. So if he wants out of the marriage and say, I don't want to give you your ketubah money because you lied to me, he wouldn't be lying to say that. He wouldn't have gone through the whole wedding. The fact that he went through this whole wedding gives him strength and him ability to be believed. Again, it's always a question. How do we know who to believe? Tana, braita says, okay, we need to understand a few things here. Right now, they say, since this is a penalty instituted by the rabbis, who said penalty? We don't know. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And they're going to change it. It doesn't actually mean penalty. But because it's only, we'll see in a minute, only a takana of the rabbis, therefore she can only demand, her ketubah money from the worst part of his land. Okay, there's all these laws when you're owed money by someone, whether depending on what it is, whether you can claim from the best of the land, it's called the idit, the middle, the benonit, or the ziburit, the worst. In this case, it's just an institution of the rabbis. She gets her ketubah money only from the worst. This was his property, or for example, if there was lien property, he owned it at the time of the wedding, and then he sold it, and he doesn't have any money to pay her back. She can go collect it from someone who bought it from him. We'll get a lot more into that later. Knasa, knasa. So the Gemara asks, what on earth are you talking about? A knas. Ela ema. What you really should say is, it should say, since it's an institution of the rabbis, a takana of the rabbis, that's why she only gets from the ziburit. If it was Torah law, she would get it from the better land. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel disagrees and says, It's from Torah. It's not rabbinic. And here you have your big machloket, although there's going to be a little bit of a debate about who says what. Umi amar Rabban Shimon Gamliel hachi, did he really say that it's from the Torah? The Hatanya, it says in a braita. Kesef yishkol kemo habtulot. Okay, this is the case of if a man seduces another woman and then a young woman and he doesn't want to marry her, or the woman doesn't, if it's really the father doesn't want the husband doesn't, the father doesn't want to give the young woman to this person who seduced her. Okay, she gets the money like the ketubah money. Okay, he has to pay her money. And there it says the amount, and that's where the 200 zuz comes from. So what do they say here? Teaches you two things. It says this is like ketubah money, which means there's ketubah money committed to her by Torah law. And then it says, well, the amount is written here. That means the ketubah money is according to the amount mentioned by the mefutah. So now, right, by a woman who's seduced. So we see here the ketubah is from the Torah. And from here the rabbis learned that ketubah isha is from the Torah. That's Tanakam. Comes Rabban Shimon Gamliel and disagrees with this. And this is why we said, how could it be that Rabban Shimon Gamliel says it's from the Torah? Here Rabban Shimon Gamliel says, it's by rabbinic law. So, ipuch, the answer is switch the shitot. The Rabban Shimon Gamliel says it's Torah, and the rabbi said it's rabbinic. And just switch the second braita that we brought, to which the Gemara says, why did you flip it in that way and switch the second source? Why don't you switch the first source? So they say, it's that they knew that Rabban Shimon Gamliel said ketubah isha is midoraita, and that's why they switched the second source and not the first source. How do we know this? Ditnan, as it says in the following Mishnah, Rabban Shimon Gamliel omer, noten la mimaot kapotkia. Here we learn about currency, and we learn that even in those days, the Israeli currency was weaker than other currencies. If you wrote your ketubah and gave it to her in the city of Kapotkia, and then you moved to Israel, and then you gave her the get in Israel, and she or you died and she's collecting the money, you give her based on the amount of the currency in Kapotkia and not the currency in Israel. Here you see that we're strict with it because it must be by Torah law. So based on that, it's clear he must be saying that he's the one who holds by Torah law, and that's the first answer to the question. The second answer is Ibait Ema Kula Rabban Shimon Gamliel Hiva Chisuri Machasvar Hachi Katan. That entire braita is Rabban Shimon Gamliel, and it's missing words, and it should read like this. Mikan Samchu Chachamim L'Ktubat Isha Min HaTorah. From here, the rabbi said Ketubah isha is from the Torah. That was the first part. That was Tanakama. That's also Rabban Shimon Gamliel. So what about the second part, where he said it's only rabbinic? Ketubah almana einami divrei Torah elami divrei sofrim. Really, by Torah law, only a virgin gets it. Where do we get that from? Because it says kimor habetulot, like the virgins got. The tuba of an almana, of a widow, this would explain, by the way, I made reference to this in the beginning. I didn't say I said we get to it. And that's why maybe a widow gets less money, because it's not by Torah law, it's only by rabbinic law. Then, then we say the ketubah of the almana is only by rabbinic law. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer, as he says, ketubah almana inami divrei Torah elami divrei sofrim. So by adding the words, what he meant to say when he said it's only rabbinic, he was referring specifically to the ketubah of widow. Okay. Now we're going to get to a whole bunch of stories where somebody claimed, you're not a virgin, and she claimed I am, and let's see what happened. So the first case, it's very interesting. They seem to be going chronologically the reverse order. They start with Amoraim, and then they go to Tanaim, and then they go to earlier Tanaim, although the Tanaim, it goes back and forth a little earlier later. But in any case, we start off with an Amar, and then we go to stories from Tanaim. Somebody came before Rav Nachman, Amar le petach patuach matzati. He said, look, I got there, have relations with her the first night, and it was clear she wasn't a virgin because it was open there, it was wide. Amar le Rav Nachman asbua kufli. Okay, now if you're wondering how he knows this, right, and how we can trust that he knows what he's talking about, this guy, so comes Rav Nachman and he said, give him lashes with a branch of a palm tree. He must be commonly, often with prostitutes. And that's how he knows petach patuach matzati. If the man's never had relations before, how on earth is he supposed to know that? So but wait a minute. Rav Nachman said somewhere else, Rav Nachman hu damar meheman. We believe him. To which the Gemara answers two answers. One is, yeah, meheman, we do believe him, but it must be in a lekufli. But at the same time, we give him lashes. We believe him because he obviously knows what he's talking about. Question is, why does he know? And for that, he gets lashes for being with prostitutes. Rav Achai Mishane, he gives a different answer. Kam b'bachor, kam b'nasui. If he was married already, then he knows, and then he doesn't need to get lashes. He knows petach patuach matzati, and he's believed because he already was with another woman, but in a permitted way. If it's a bachor who's never been married, then we were suspicious when he comes and claims petach patuach. Rabban Gamliel. So now we're going to the Tana'itic times. Okay, came before Rabban Gamliel. Amarle petach patuach matzati. Amarle shema. Now this is a very hard section to understand exactly what they mean. Shema iteta. Maybe you went in on an angle. I'll give you a mashal. What's this like? La'adam. Now, in general, we're going to be comparing this opening of the woman to a door. Okay, it's the same thing, petach patuach, right? I got there and I found it open. The door was open. Seem to have this analogy of the door. So I'll sell it. It's like this. He's walking in the darkness. He can't see anything. And then he gets to a door. If he comes on an angle, now this isn't exactly clear what they mean. If he doesn't come on an angle, then he finds it locked. Some people explain that what they mean is if he came and if he moved, there was something in front of it and he moved it away, pushed it away. That might be what's going on here. He pushed something aside. Not exactly clear what they're referring to. Some people say it's that he did it forcefully. Okay, if he came in with a lot of force, he didn't even feel it, and it felt like it was petach patuach. That's maybe a better way to understand it, although it does seem to see angled. What exactly angled is not so clear. And why that would feel different and feel more open, not really clear. Some people have a different version. This is what he said to him. Maybe you intentionally went in on an angle, not by accident, but you intentionally did, which some people say means with force. Mitzao patuach, and you knocked out the door, or you pushed open the door, and you went in. I'll tell you what this is like. A man is walking in the darkness. If he pushes it intentionally, then the door will open. If he doesn't do it intentionally, he'll find it locked. Okay, another story. Amarle says to him, this is Rabban Gamliel, the son of Rebbe. He says to him, the guy comes for him. Amarle Rebbe, ba'alti v'lo matzati dam. Okay, that was all petach patuach, which we claim, right? Maybe he doesn't know, or maybe he does know. And if he does know, where does he know this from, right? That's not such a good thing. Or maybe he went in a bit of a different angle and it felt different than it should have felt. Again, how would he know? We don't really know. But now we're getting to, he has relations with her and sees no blood. So Amralo, Rebbe, betulayiti. So they asked the woman and she said, look, I'm a virgin. I know I'm a virgin. So now we have his word against her word. What do we do? Go give me the sheath that they have relations on. Now, obviously there's no blood. If there was blood, it would have been obvious. Well, Sudar, they bring the sheet to him. He soaks it in water, washes it, and then he found blood. By washing it, what happened? The semen that was on it was covering the blood. Once he washed it, it took off the semen without taking out the blood. It's easier to get semen out than it is blood. It's see-through rather than red. And he found the blood and he said, oh, look, here's the blood. Okay, and she was right in the end. By the way, the halacha says, it's quoted in the Shulchan Aruch, that if you don't see dam betulim on the first night, you can assume that there was blood and that the semen covered it and you just don't see it. And that comes from our sugya. So halacha l'maaseh, very often happens that they don't see blood. And then it's a little bit more complicated than I'm stating it right now, but this whole thing, what to do and how do you, maybe they didn't really have full relations, maybe they did and you just didn't see it. Maybe she tore her hymen some other time and didn't know. Anyway, here they don't really talk about that very much. Anyway, Amarlo, go and enjoy your purchase. Okay, we're going to see this line over and over. Again, ki kach is from the Torah about him acquiring her. It's not exactly a term we find an endearing term, but what he's basically saying is you can enjoy your wife because she's clearly a virgin. Amar le Rav Huna Mar Berei de Rava Mipar Zakia le Rav Ashi. Ananami nevad hachi. We should also do this with the washing. That's a great solution. Amar le Rav Ashi says to him, no, we can't do this. Turning now to Amabet. Gihutz shelanu kikibush shelahem. Our ironing, or we'll talk about exactly what this is like their laundering. We don't really launder. We do it with a stone and we wipe out the dirt. In that case, our washing, we don't have good washing like they do. We don't wash things in water. I don't know why they did. This comes up in a bunch of places, but their, Rashi says, Shayu mehen yafim lechabes, their waters, o samanim yafim ayalem lechabes, bushalanu ena begem meluban ad she'em meguhat. Like our water doesn't clean it out. I don't know why exactly, but the point is we use this stone and the stone wipes it out entirely. We clean the blood as well. And then we'd have no way of really determining, so we can't use this. So the Iyamar, now the gihutz, if we did gihutz specifically, ma'abra lechumrata, we would take it all off and then we wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Another case that happened with Rabban Gamliel, the son of Rabbi, Amar le Rabbi. Said I had relations with her. I didn't see blood. Amar le Rabbi Adayim betulani. She says, look, I'm still a virgin. Amar lehen aviu li shtei shvachot. Bring me two maidservants, one who had relations and one who didn't. One's a virgin, one's not. Heviulo, they bring to him. You'll probably remember this from Yevamot. If you learned it, it was quite memorable. I have one new thing to add, thanks to Jordana Hymen, who sent me a great message about this last week. I'll tell you in 1 minute. He put them, both the two maidservants, they knew one was a virgin and one wasn't. They put them on top of, with no undergarments, on top of a barrel of wine. Be'ula rechanodef. Betula and rechanodef. And the smell went through her body because it was open. The one who had already had relations wasn't a virgin anymore. And her breath smelled bad. Or you smelled the wine on it. Betula and rechanodef. But a virgin, no, you didn't have that. Av Zoe Shiva. So after he saw that, he put this woman also. Veloya rechanodef. Her breath didn't smell, and then he knew she was still a virgin. Amarlo lechsachei b'mekrecha. So before I tell you what Jordana told me, I'm going to keep reading because the Gemara here is very interesting. Gemara now says, why did he bring the two maidservants? If he knew this test was going to work, why didn't he just do it on her right away? Gemara have a Shmuel. The answer is he had a tradition about this, but Maselo have a chazi, but he never saw anybody use this. V'saval, and he thought, just like we kind of think when we hear this, maybe this doesn't really work. And he didn't want to try it out and humiliate her. At least they understand that this was humiliating to the woman to go through this. But in this case, we want to save her, right? So it's worth it, but only if we know it's going to work. So first he took these two maidservants who were less concerned with embarrassing, although some commentaries do say that he must have paid them demei boshet, money, for the embarrassment he caused them by doing this to them. But still, he'd prefer to do that than to embarrass this Jewish woman, in which case, once he saw it worked, then he was able to use this. So what did Jordana write me last week? She's told me she's a doctor that deals with fertility issues. And she wrote me, great message. She said she was at this European fertility conference. And when they were talking about ancient fertility practices, and they said that there was this technique that they used to detect fertile days, what would they do? They would put an onion or garlic inside the vagina. And if the flavor is detected in the woman's breath, then she's ovulating. Okay, which is very interesting. It's different. It's not the same thing, but it was clear that they use her breath as an indicator of certain things that were going on inside her body. Very fascinating. It just shows you that these things that seem crazy to us were things that it wasn't just a Jewish thing. It was beliefs that people had in those days, and it's based on that, right? Luckily, we don't see anybody giving this test to anybody nowadays. Okay, next. Now we're going earlier into the elder, Rabban Gamliel the elder. Amar lo Rebbe ba'alti v'lo matzati dam. Again, he says, have relations, didn't find blood. Amar lo Rebbe, mimishpacha dorkati ani. I'm from the family of the dorkatis. She'en lam lo dam nida v'lo dam betulim. We don't menstruate and we don't have dam betulim. We don't have blood from our hymen. Badak Rabban Gamliel b'krovotei. He checked her relatives. U'matzah kedvarei, and he saw, in fact, it was true. Amar lo le'sachei b'mekrecha. Go and enjoy your wife, because the reason she doesn't have dam betulim is because she's from this family that doesn't bleed. Ashrecha shezachita lemishpachat dorkati. Right? How blessed are you that you got into this family? It's a very strange line. Why? So first of all, my dorkati. What is the word? Why? Right? We darshan the words. We're going to talk a lot today about words at the end of today's daf. Dor katua. It's a cut off generation. That means, let's think about it. They don't have menstrual cycles. They don't bleed. They don't have children. Talk about fertility. So, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Tanchumim shel hevel nichamo Rabban Gamliel lo to'aish. When he said, "Oh, ashrecha," he was being facetious. This is Tanchumim of hevel. He was right. This is nothing. It was terrible what's happening to him right now. Titani Rabbi Chia, kashem is a bit of a strange way of saying this, but we'll get the idea. Kashem shasaor yafelisa, just like the leavening agent causes, the more you have, the more the dough will rise. Kachtamim yafim lisha. The more blood a woman has, the better it is, because it means she'll have children. V'tana mishum Rabbi Meir, kol isha shedameha merubim. The braita says in the name of Rabbi Meir, a woman who has a lot of blood, baneha merubim, she'll have more sons. So, itmar. Now we have this machloket. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba amar zechei b'mekchecha. Right? What he really said, Amar le. He really said to her, enjoy your wife. For Rabbi Yossi bar Abba amar nitchayev b'mekchecha. You got messed up by your purchase. Amar le. That's what he said to him. So bishlam alaman damar nitchayev. That we understand. Hainu to Rabbi Chanina. That's Rabbi Chanina. Elaman damar zechei. My zchuta. What kind of zchut was this? There is some advantage to it. You don't have to worry that maybe by accident you'll sleep with your wife when she's in nida, because this woman never bleeds. So there's a certain advantage to it, even though it's obviously a disadvantage as well, because you won't end up having children. Okay, another story. Again, same thing. I was really a virgin. I don't know what he's talking about. It was years of drought. There was no food. Rabbi saw that their faces were black. They were malnourished. So he commanded them to go into the merchatz to get washed up. He gave them food. He gave them drink. He put them in a room. He has relations with her and she bleeds. What happened here? Go enjoy your wife. Kari, right, she clearly was virgin. Kari Rebbe Alehem, he said about them, Safad Oram alatzmam, their skin is withered in their bones. Yavesh hayaka eitz, they were dry like a tree. In other words, the malnutrition caused her not to have any blood. As soon as she ate, she was able to have blood. Now, why did they feed him as well? Either just not to be awkward, give her food, not him, or maybe also it was partially his fault. He wasn't performing properly because he didn't have any food. Okay, new Mishnah. Betulak tubatamatayim almana maneh. We already know this. The betula gets 200, the virgin, and an almana gets 100. But a betula almana grusha v'chalutza mina erusim. Right, an almana just doesn't mean a widow. Anyone who was already married and is not a virgin. But if they were they were still a betula, but they were divorced or widowed or had chalitza from erusim. Remember, we learned once you're betrothed, you need a divorce to get out of it. Or if you're widowed, you're a widow. Because halachic engagement is engaged, right? Has not our engagement. This is halachic engagement, as we've discussed. Ketubot, they still get 200 because they're still virgins. And he can claim, if he thinks there's no blood, he thinks there's no betulim, he can make a claim on them. These women really weren't virgins, and he'd be believed, again, depending on the situation. Right? Already we saw the situations where he's not believed. So now the Gemara says, and from here we're going to get off till the end of this Mishnah, the only thing this Mishnah is going to discuss is etymology. My almana, where did this word almana, where did we get from widow to the word almana? Why is an almana a widow? And not that we started with widow in English, right? The question is, why is it almana? Where does that word come from? Amar Rav Chana Bagdata, almana al shem maneh. It's because of our halacha. She gets a maneh, she's called an almana. Migial eleha, right, to her, gets a maneh, which again is 100 zuz. Almana mina erusim ma'ika lememar, but an almana from erusin, a widow from engagement, betrothal, doesn't get that. So how can you explain that? That's simple. I did to hakari la'almana, hakari la'almana. The word really comes from a regular widow, from marriage. And there's a widow from engagement. We call her by the same thing, even though she doesn't get a manah. The word originally comes from almana. It's then applied elsewhere. So now they say, okay, this all comes from the maneh, and that's all. Again, if you assume ketubah is derived, So, almana diktiva boai tamayika lememar. Why is she called an almana in the Torah? This didn't exist in the time of the Torah. Because the rabbis eventually are going to do this. So the Torah called it almana based on what was going to happen in the future. To which the Gemara obviously asks, when we katav kralati, do we write psukim about something that will happen in the future? And yes, we do. In fact, dichtiv v'shem anahar shlishi chidekel hu alech kidmat ashur. What is Ashur? There wasn't any Ashur at the time. Tana Rav Yosef, Ashur Zosleika, that's what Ashur is referring to. Umi Havai, did it exist then? No. Eled Atida, Hachanami Atida. Okay, so this is talking about something in the future, therefore also here in the future. This is obviously from the beginning. Sefer Bereshit, when it's talking about Gan Eden, where there was nothing, right? Okay, now, since we're talking about Rav Chana bar Data and words, we're now going to have some other things he says and other things other people say that have to do with words. Ve'amar Rav Chana bar Data, matal. What is matal? Mashke, marvet, mizabel, ma'adenu, mamshich. The rain, what does it do? It waters, it saturates, it fertilizes, it softens or refines, and mamshich, and causes continuity. Amar Rava bar Rabbi Shmuel, v'yitem Rabbi Yomi bar Shlemya, Maika. Where do we see a pasuk about this? Tilameha revei nachat, watering its ridges abundantly. Talamea rave, nachat gidudeha, settling its furrows, right? This is what the rain does. Berevivim timogagna, you make it soft with your rain showers. Simchat tivarech, and its growth will be blessed, or you will bless its growth. Amar Rabbi Elazar, mizbeach, what does an altar do? And what do the letters stand for? Meziach, it moves. Umezin, it satiates, like food. Mechabev, it makes people beloved. And mechaper, it atones. So what does meziach move? So hainu mechaper, hainu meziach. What does it move? It moves sin away, just like mechaper, it atones. So the altar does. So they say, no. Meziach gezerot, it removes evil decrees, and mechaper avonot, and atones for people's sins. But Amar Rav Chana bar Data, back to him. Timare, he says some other things. These don't have to really do with words, but what do we know about dates? He's going to talk about how great dates are. Mishachanan, they warm you up. Misab'an, they satiate you. Mishalshalan, they loosen your bowels. This is in a good way. Me'ashran, they strengthen you. V'lo mefankan, and they don't pamper you. Amarav, achal tmarim al yoreh. If you eat tmarim, don't start teaching a halacha. Don't start ruling any sort of halacha, answer halachic questions or anything. To which the Gemara says, Meitive, seems to contradict the other source. Tmarim, dates, shacharit, v'arvi yafot. If you eat them in the morning and at night, they're good. B'mincha, if you eat them before your meal at lunchtime, bra'ot, they're bad for you. B'tzoraim, in the afternoon, ein kamotam, they're amazing. U'mivatlot shloshat dvarim, and they take away three bad things. Machshava ra'ah, bad thoughts, chole me'ayim, intestinal problems, v'tachtoniot, and hemorrhoids. So that seems to say they're good for you. So why are you saying you can't teach? To which they say, we didn't say they're not good for you. They're good. But momentarily, they cause you problems. Okay, they cause you not to think straight. You need to have yachamer, just like wine. They're intoxicating. Just like someone says, how shoter revit al yoret. If you drank a revit of wine, don't teach halacha. Don't rule on anything because you're not clear-headed. So that's the same thing. Or alternatively, bait emalo kasha hamakame nama halabatar nama. One is before you eat bread, one is after you eat bread. Right? It's like drinking on an empty stomach. To Amar Abayas said, Amar li'ain. My mother told me, it was not really his mother, it's the woman who brought him up. So his mother had died. Tamre mekame nama kinarga l'dikula. If you eat dates before you eat food on an empty stomach, it's like taking an axe to the tree, to the palm tree. Knocks it down. It'll knock you down. But batarnama ki avra ledasha. We're back to the door theme. If you do it after, it's like opening a door. What do they mean here? This is in terms of the loosening your bowels. Dasha. Now then it mentions the word dasha, which means door. Where does that come from? Amarava derech sham. They're now darshaning the letters of, again, more letters. Dasha derech sham. That's the way to get to somewhere is through the door. Darga, which is a ladder or a step. Amarava derech gag, it's the way to the roof. Darga derech gag. Puria, which means bed. Amarav papa sheparim v'ravin aleh. That's what causes you to have children. Amarav Nachman bar Yitzchak af anu nomar ailonit duchranit. Why is an ailonit called an ailonit? We've talked about the ailonit many times in Yavama. We never got to this. Comes from ayal, which is a male. It's a ram, which is male. Males don't have children. De lo yalda. It's a woman who can't have children. She's like a zachar. Duchranit is a zachar. She's like a male ram who can't have children. With that, we will end for today, and we will start up tomorrow. Have a Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov to everyone.